Yeah, welcome very much to Conversations. It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce to the program, I want to make sure I get this right, Dr. Sat Bhattacharya. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Bhattacharya, and I'll read off from the card. Well, he is a scientist, and he's a researcher in the field of cancer research with Sloan Kettering, I think.
Yeah.
And he's also the creator, the founder, and the president of a unique organization here in Manhattan. It's called the Harlem Children Society, and we're going to be talking to some great depth with that. And he's also associated with another thing at Rockefeller University. Maybe you could lay that one out for me. You're associated with Sigma Chi.
Yeah, Sigma Psi.
What is the title there and everything?
So I'm the president of the Rockefeller University chapter of Sigma Psi Scientific Research Society. It's one of the oldest scientific organizations in the United States and in the world, with over 200 Nobel laureates.
That's a great honor, and I congratulate. Joshua
Thanks.
Letterberg was
Yes,
associated with
absolutely.
president, and Rockefeller University is a
Absolutely.
major research
It's a
facility on
hotbed
a
of
world
research,
scale.
yeah.
On a world scale.
Right.
And so all of that said, welcome very much to Manhattan Neighborhood
you.
Network. It's a great pleasure to welcome
Thanks.
you to this set. And I wonder, maybe you could, Doctor, maybe you could share, I like to do this, share your own personal background a little bit, your education, that sort of thing. And then we'll get into a talk. And we want to go into some depth. I think we have a little clip of the Harlem Children Society. But share your own background a little bit, if you could, please. Education and all that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you, and with your wonderful background, with what you have, and the folks here at the television station.
Yeah.
Now, now I'm trained as a molecular geneticist.
Okay.
And lately, in the last 20-odd years or so, I've been using that skill to identify tumor cells in circulation.
Okay.
So what I do is using genetic means to identify and hopefully find solutions to perhaps find a way to a cure, or not a cure, but to at least identify so that we can understand the disease and therefore contain it.
Are we making progress? It's been there for a long. I can remember when I was young, to have cancer, it was just as well undeath now.
Right.
There was nothing you could do. We've made some progress. We have radiation. We have other kinds of therapies and so.
Right.
What's the pattern that we can see over the last 20, 30, 40 years in terms of understanding this dread disease that takes so many lives?
Right. Well, cancer has been there since the time of the dinosaurs,
Okay.
and will be there, and will be growing still, because we are living longer and longer lives.
Yes.
And therefore we are exposed to a whole variety of environmental factors, or even in our genetic makeup. Simply because we are living longer lives, we are exposed to a multitude of even genetic factors. Now, most of the human ailments that eventually we are succumbed to, either it is heart disease, which is cardiovascular disease,
Yes.
brain disease, which can be Alzheimer's or any sorts of other dementia and other diseases,
Yes.
or it can be cancer, which is just basically how the body cells react to either the internal environment or external environment, and therefore it grows improportionately and therefore consumes the host.
Yeah, I wonder if we go back over time. It's the paleologic and so on.
Right.
Would there have been when was the recognition of this thing called cancer first identified in the medical canon and that sort of thing? Or were there been other deaths they would have said it was the fumes or the vipers or something? When was it first identified as a distinct problem in terms of medical science?
Right. Well, there's been enough evidence that tumorous growth has been found in the dinosaurs. So they've
Really?
been, oh yes.
And a link to the cancer as we
yes.
understand it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really
So
genetically interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. But genetically, but also environmentally, and more so in our current times, in the last 100 years or so, because of a variety of chemical and other factors that are in our immediate environment, we are exposed to a whole lot of other factors that was not there perhaps 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago.
So would that account for an increase in cancer over what was the case historically?
Yes.
You think? Okay.
It does.
Yes,
but then correspondingly, because of the advancement of science and technology, we are understanding some kinds of cancers better than others.
Okay.
Now, cancers, people think it's just one disease, but it is a multitude of diseases.
Yes.
So a brain cancer is different from a lung cancer, is different from glioma and all the other factors. Even brain has different kinds of cancers,
right.
as you said.
Three, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, and each one of them behave differently. Even the breast cancer, for example, we understand breast cancer pretty good these days, and which was opposed to even say even 40 years ago, it was almost a death sentence for many women.
That's the way it's, when I was young. That's the way I
but
remember.
it has drastically changed that whole outcome, and so women are leading more longer lives. And so what is happening is now cancer is almost becoming like a chronic. Some kinds of cancers are becoming a chronic disorder, and therefore we are able to contain that, and people who have had that disease, it's like would be any other disease.
Yeah, like a simple melanoma.
Yeah, or like tuberculosis.
Okay,
like in our lifetime, the 1950s, if someone had tuberculosis, that also was almost close to a death sentence. But no longer, because even if you have TB, people are taken care of, they take medication, and the disease is contained.
I can remember my father, if I may be personal for a minute, he was born in 1899, and I'm talking now about medical science, the advance and that sort of thing, and thank God for penicillin and antibiotics and things. But he was buried. He died and buried on his 48th birthday from a heart attack. And I can remember that back, and that was in 1948. Okay?
My goodness.
And when he had the attack, I came upon him. It was horrible. His face was blue and everything. And they came from the, you call the medical emergency, and they came and they had a pulmotor, the kind of thing, that's all they had.
Right.
There was no streptokinase.
Right.
If there had been streptokinase, a thing to yet be invented, you could have put it in and it would blast it apart like dynamite. The block. You understand that.
Right.
And so we've made progress, and we're making progress all the time. Medically, are we not?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Are we deserving? There's always been a thing, let's get a cure for cancer. Are we making some progress along those lines? Are we understanding it better? Is it running ahead of us? Where do we stand as a human society in the quest to try and bring a cessation to death by cancer, which would be the ultimate goal if we could?
Right. Well, we are certainly making a huge progress in cancer, and that we can see in a multitude of cancers, like, as we said, breast cancer and other types of cancers. Obviously, our detection systems have gotten better. We are catching those diseases early, and therefore, also, it depends on us to be constantly monitoring ourselves of certain early detection systems, and that also is a scientific advancement. Early detection is a better cure.
Yeah, it is. That's important. Right?
Yeah, it's important. And then
and tests for that.
Yeah, exactly.
In a routine kind of way, it should just be assumed by everybody.
Right. And the treatments have gotten better so that people are living longer and healthier lifestyles. But at the same time, we have to be conscious of not only our own genes, because some genes, some people are
There's a genetic predisposition. There is.
Yeah.
Are we understanding that process?
Yeah.
You're a geneticist as well as a cancer.
So we understand.
There is a genetic predisposition to some of these
diseases, like breast cancer. Some women are more predisposed to others, like HER2/neu, and then there are other sorts of other genes that are that affect how cancers are caused.
I see.
But then there are environmental factors, like smoking obviously has been implicated in lung cancer, for instance, and that's definitely been proved. Asbestos, the list goes on. And
mesothelioma, you see ads on television all the time.
Exactly. So we now know that these factors do cause a major role, and many of the other hormones, certain hormones that we eat, and therefore we have to be conscious of what we consume and our immediate environment that also has an impact on us human beings.
Can you do any large pattern understanding of the overall situation in terms of diet?
Oh,
do you
absolutely.
think diet affects it? Is there any predisposition away from, let's say, meat or
Yes.
something that is a major part of the diet, would you recommend prophylactically or otherwise a certain kind of diet to the people? And one thing that's come up on some of these programs here is cannabis is
Right.
something that has medical properties that can address many cancers. Have you heard of that? Is there anything to that? What do people like yourself, responsibly placed in the scientific community, think of some of those things?
Well, obviously, cannabis, there's now increased understanding and it's been used.
They're cure for cancers, they say.
Well, at least it is contained in a way people sort of react to it favorably while they're undergoing treatment. And obviously, that has a big impact on the patient's life and living.
Yeah.
And that is very important. We just cannot live in a vegetative state of mind and body, but we have to live a healthy, have a healthy
Now, are there any givens in terms of what makes for a healthy way of living?
I think the more we take care of our immediate environment, that includes the plants and the animals that we eat, and obviously it affects us as human beings, because if we use increased usage of insecticides and pesticides, obviously, which is going, and then even with the animals, increased use of antibodies, or antibiotics and hormones in many of the animal species that we eventually consume, obviously has a deleterious effect on us human beings.
One of the problems of television is the tyranny of time. I could talk to you on this for about 5 hours. We'll have to do it over coffee someday. Sure. But anyway, and the thing is, one of the things I'm going to just say at that point, I love Alice Slater. She's a friend of mine who's an environmentalist. And one of the things I really object to is the industrial farming with the creatures. I cannot believe that they have to resort to the way they treat the chickens and the pigs. They keep them in confinement. It's unconscionable in my mind. They ought to be wandering around in the meadow or something.
That's true.
Anyway, we have to get away from all this because it's so interesting. I really am interested. I could go on forever, but let's get on if we could. You're doing this research, and this thing that we want to really talk about is you are now the founder and the president of this very unique movement that you're involved with called Harlem Children Society. Could you talk to that and what it is, the importance of it? Because I think that has great sociological significance in a major pattern way. Yeah.
Sure. Well, initially you asked about my background.
We didn't get around it.
Yeah. But that's in I'm trained as a geneticist, and I had much of my training in India, and then I came here briefly in Canada, and then in the United States for some time.
Glad you got that in. The trouble is you're too interesting. You're too interesting. Could you slow down a little bit and not be so interesting? But go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You're being too kind.
No, I'm not. I'm being real. Yeah.
So, after all these years, I've been noticing that there was a dearth of various folks in the upper echelons in science, medicine, and engineering.
Absolutely.
And there is a lot of encouragement. There are all sorts of scholarships, especially folks in the African American, Hispanic, and Native American communities.
There are a lot of opportunities for that or not? There hasn't been. It seems to me they've been inordinately...
In universities, there are. There are scholarships and things like that.
That's available. Coming now.
Yes, but even it has been there even, say, 20, 30 years ago. But somehow it has not seeped in that they have had much impact of these students coming in, even in the sciences.
Particularly at the higher end of research, discovery.
And medicine and engineering.
And you're looking at teenagers, really young children.
Yes, so that's what I was wondering as to why, if there are some opportunities that are available, scholarships and all, how come these folks are not properly represented in
and that would be inordinately, as with everything else, it would seem to me, the black and brown community of the United States.
Yeah.
So that's right.
Yeah. But
how can we identify the budding geniuses in those quarters that have not been recognized?
Right. Yeah. Right. So I sort of felt, I pondered about this for quite some time before I actually implemented it, because I didn't know how to do it, how to address the issue, because I'm trained as a scientist, and then I cannot leave my profession and become a high school teacher, which I can, but it would do a disservice to what I, what I was doing.
You're busy doing what you're doing.
But I also felt
have a social responsibility.
That's sort of, I thought it of as something that I found odd, that there was not enough representation, and I sort of, so probably I thought that it was more of an economic issue, that many of these folks, because they are poor, because their poverty is the main issue, that they are not coming into sciences. But on top of
I'm easy to relate to that thing. It seems to me so much of the dysfunction in the society has to do with a bad economic model in terms of the whole of the population.
Exactly. But poverty, superimposed on poverty is a race, class, and gender issue. So if you are poor and happen to be black or Hispanic or Native American or any other disenfranchised group of population, it becomes even more difficult.
Would this apply in India? With the they have this thing called untouchable,
the caste system.
The caste system. That seems to me really sort of odd. But yet there's some wisdom to that.
Well, initially when it started, 7,000-8,000 years ago.
Kind of a long run.
Yes. That time, the way how caste system was thought and evolved was to divide the society in a way that effectively operates optimally. So you have these people in groups, and each group does one specialized thing.
Brahmins and warriors.
Exactly. But at that time, people could move from one caste to the other.
Is that true?
Yes.
You can move out of the untouchable class if you're born into it?
Because
is that true?
It's karmic.
There's movability there or not?
Yeah, because it's karmic.
How did it hold for 8,000 years? The people that were untouchables didn't make a revolution.
That's because the Dark Ages came in. The Dark Ages came in, and the people with the most power had the lid on other people coming up.
That seems to me like the history of civilization everywhere.
Everywhere.
Including the United States.
Everywhere. So, you give people power, and sometimes
they want to hold on
to it, and they will see to it that they will sort of keep other people from taking on the position. But that's a human thing. But the other good aspect of human beings there's always this tussle and for improvement. And so there is always this tussle between the good and bad and the ugly. So,
and it continues.
And it continues. And most of the time, the good wins, and there is always that we have a hope in our minds that
does the good win always?
Well, not always.
Not always. Hitler won a great power in 1933-39. It wasn't particularly good.
Right, but we eventually won the war.
Napoleon marched on Moscow. Come on, guys, let's go to Moscow. And it was disastrous. It's just been based upon whoever's got the biggest club, by and large, who have a real politic. Whoever can beat the others into submission has been the rule of real politic that still holds. It seems to me the world's still unjust in terms of the whole of it, much less the ecology.
But in the end, things try to balance it out.
You think?
Because
nature or something?
it's how we as human species, and in relation to everything around us, try to make some sense, and everything falls in place.
And there is some progress.
And
we have streptokinase, thanks to the scientific community, and we're making, that's right. But now back to the children's, the Harlem Children Society.
If
we can.
Yeah, sure. So I thought that probably because of its economic issue, and since I was not born here, and I didn't quite understand the high school education system, I just took those big fat yellow books in those days, 10 years ago, and I thought I called up a few schools, one in Harlem.
You're still trying to get at what was to become the Harlem Children Society. Okay, good. Okay, good for you.
So I called a couple schools in Harlem and a couple schools in Jersey City, because they were a poverty place where poverty lied, and it made sense to me.
All right.
And and I went and spoke to a few principals, and I said, I am at Sloan Kettering, and I do cancer research, and I think I might be of help if you give me some bright young students, but they have to be below poverty line.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That was your criteria.
Yeah, but I would like to interview them and then select from them some people, not necessarily top of the class, but students who have a certain fire in them.
Right. Okay.
So, because in my mind, being top of the class doesn't necessarily mean that you have that inner fire that will drive you.
You might be just good at doing what you're told by some authority figure,
right,
which is a good deal of what goes on in academia, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but also, especially in the lower echelons of the economic ladder, because people are poor, they have big challenges. They have to work multiple jobs. There are single parent homes. There's drugs. There is crime. So despite all of that, a student perhaps cannot get an A.
Yeah.
So
that's right. But they might have the spark.
They might have the spark.
You know, like look for that.
Yeah, and then if you
connect them to mentors or something, or connect them to the system.
Yes, I was the first, mentor. So
that you had you were a mentor to them. I see. Yeah, you didn't have somebody that was a mentor to you.
Well,
you probably do.
I always have mentors.
Yeah, right. The world works that way, doesn't it?
I mean,
politically and scientifically and academically,
always have to have
it's a club of people who know one another and people who relate to one another.
And that's
also important. A leg up, as they say, in the evolution of society. Is it not? It is. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why it has to be taught.
Yeah.
It has to be taught to go and seek out your mentors. And when you have found your mentors, and that changes with time.
How about the mentors seeking out the mentorees?
Yeah.
Your attitude should be more widespread among the scientific and intellectual community of the United States or the world.
Well,
I would think
you're generous with what you're saying, but you're right. But many people are so busy in their lives.
Of course, that's always useful as a way of thinking. What caused you to think that way?
I guess I had an itch.
You had an itch or a sense of social conscience or a sense of something beyond just the research you're focused on? That's important because the academic community is becoming, it seems to me, having been in there for a while, and me being a systems guy, I like big patterns and everything, it's become so overly specialized.
Yes.
Everything is specialized now to where there's practically no systems thinking or group thinking to where you can take into account anything other than your very narrow it's like a divide and conquer of the intellectual community by the ruling class, it seems to me. And it's characteristic of the academic community now.
I think it's true.
I don't know.
Yeah, but it's true of so many human things that we are faced with. Because we as human beings, we try to zone in. But as much as good it is to zone in and find a solution, it is good to zone out and find the relationship between what we're observing with a wider scale.
Also, academically, between pattern recognition, between cybernetically, they have a thing, you do some, you have great, you can go in great detail, but Norbert Wiener came up with that idea, or a friend of mine, Norbert Wiener, he said, pattern, we're being inundated every day. Sat, can I call you Sat?
Sure.
Yeah, please. Sat. Every day comes over the transform breakthrough in every field all over. Do you notice? It's just coming in an overflow, a Niagara and Iguazu combined Niagara of discovery and everything. It's new things coming all the time. And information overload, Norbert Wiener said, information overload permits pattern recognition. Instead of being just interested in the one thing, you can go off and see the connection between this and this and this and that, and it's where that pattern recognizing seems to be making it more and more difficult through the academic process. What the kids are being forced to be is interested in one thing that will get them a certificate, that will give them the ability to do something that will make money.
Right.
Money is still the major operating principle that organizes world society. Unfortunately, it would seem to me, but doesn't that seem to be the case to you? There's love and other kinds of things.
It's not a bad idea, but it could be one of the driving forces of human endeavor. It can be, making money is not necessarily a bad thing, but doing other things and exploring other ways, other conscious levels,
Yes.
so whether it is a consciousness to serve or to take care of nature, even gardening,
Yes,
or do
right.
other things.
Gardening is really worthwhile.
Are good things that one has, that not everything doesn't have to have a value in place.
But it's overwhelmingly that way. We had a fellow, George Stoney, who set this up. He was the one who set up this public access thing and everything. Great man. He was at Tisch School and everything. And he said he was very disturbed by the course. He died recently, 96 years old.
Oh, really?
But sad to say, he was a great man. He said the students are coming in, they're asking, what do I have to do to get an A? What do I have to do to get a B on this specialized thing? And then you got the guy ego tripping on his thing with all the nuance of the use of the pluperfect tense in 13th century French poetry in the southeast part of France or something, all specialized, ego tripped, and they're all trying to get him to give them an A so they can get into Harvard Business School. It's all outer directedness.
Right.
Do you understand?
Right.
Unfortunately.
Right.
And it's all because the economic system isn't one that can allow people to be their full potential.
Right.
That's jumping.
Right.
But let's get back to the Harlem Children Society, which is you're trying to make it so some of the disadvantaged people can get in touch with some of the leadership. And that could be a two-way street.
Yeah.
That could help the leadership as well as
Absolutely.
them.
You got actually, it helps the leadership more. Of course, it's both ways.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what I felt was because the damage is occurring at the lower grades, we have to. That's why I had to go and reach out to the lower grades. Actually, we should go even further down.
Can you go right back to preschool?
Middle school and preschool.
How about preschool? The whole thing, the whole out of the womb. We're learning like crazy.
Many people are experimenting with that, but that's not my field.
No,
otherwise, I'll be, So actually, we have been evolving some middle school systems to that. We can talk later.
Yeah.
But then, so take these bright students. And they're below poverty, and give them some incentive of a financial incentive.
Okay.
And I brought them on, teach them
as interns, maybe.
As interns.
Yeah.
Isolating cells, isolating DNA, sequencing them, characterizing
rubbing
them, and so forth.
Elbows with the people in
the hospital, wearing a white lab coat and talking and being an adult, and most importantly, giving these teenagers a sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Because
also
the fact
contact with the people who are in that responsible institutional structure.
Right. And being treated as responsible people and giving them the sense of responsibility that if you do something wrong, everyone is being affected. And that sense of responsibility is very important, and the teenagers actually get it.
Yeah, and this ethics of the profession, which are always worth keeping track of, can be reified or can be inculcated within the students, and that can get them on attack. Yeah, so it's a very good idea.
Exactly, and then even though the research that we're doing are very, very high tech, and isolating genes and so forth. But I would have courses, just regular classes of what is the DNA and things like that that they have studied in their high school, but at a little higher level. So then they start to understand what they're studying in high school, like the DNA replication or cell division and all those things make sense in the real world.
Right. Okay.
And that hands-on experience is very important because it's like a child. It's like a child playing with the clay.
And that idea could be expanded out to many other institutions other than cancer research or science.
Exactly.
The whole society could be informed by such.
So that's exactly what happened. So once I got in, and they, many of them happen to be African American and Hispanic.
Good. They ought to get some leg up after all that nonsense they've had to put up with over the decades and centuries.
So and then eventually some of my friends and colleagues also at the hospital realized that they're not as dangerous.
I understand.
Because these teenagers are coming in who can be rowdy and we were talking like 10 years, 11 years ago, and they're coming from Bronx or Brooklyn or Harlem, and are they safe? So
not only safe but valuable and interesting.
Right. And can they be trained? And these are opinions, and I believe people people can have opinions because we live in a society, but we have to train ourselves to see how opinions get translated into a thought process.
Reality and lifestyle.
Yeah,
and
but
opportunities.
Yeah, but before it graduates into a judgment, we have to be very cautious of how that philosophy moves from opinion to a judgment, because when it becomes a judgment, it tends to concretize itself, and therefore we cannot shake that off. So we have to always.
Looseness might be the most valuable kind of context for that thing to develop.
Right. Exactly.
Without this strict authoritarianism, like hitting people with a stick.
Right.
You know, that kind. Listen, one of the I mentioned it before. I think earlier in this program, I do it a lot. The tyranny of time. Right.
Right.
We have a little clip, I think, that is from your site. Right?
Yes.
And maybe we could set that up and run that to good use now.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
it's going to say, we're saying the audience and in the control room, maybe they get ready. It's a little clip. It's a little bit long, but we're going to arrange maybe about 5 minutes or so of it.
Sure.
And we're going to leave it up to the discretion of our eminently qualified person in the control room to, along about 5 minutes, find a point where the music soars or it's a good break point, and then we'll come back. We're talking with Dr. Sat Bhattacharya, and let's see if we can run that little clip up and now, please, if we can.
Chance to be encouraged by a mentor or other people and be in a nurturing atmosphere, they will do amazing.
I worked in this laboratory for the whole summer thanks to the Harlem Children Society program that I'm in. A very great opportunity for me to do in-depth science programs. So welcome.
We worked on mice that have the mutated HBRAF gene so that we can use this vaccine to try to suppress the melanoma that they develop. The goal of my research is to have a cure for melanoma cancer, skin cancer. The most surprising thing about my research was that I can be able to work in a lab and have results as real scientists do in the lab. Having a mentor, it was really an eye-opening experience for me because now I know there's a lot of careers in the medical field, especially for women. The sky is my limit. I can do anything that I put my mind to.
Firstly, I saw that there was a serious underrepresentation of various minorities. Because these students don't come to the sciences, it's better to catch them at early stages so that we can foster a few students who need an avenue to grow.
After Dr. Sat talked to us and I was finally assigned my mentor and told my topic, I worked from usually 9 to about 5 and sometimes later. But I really think that the whole Harlem Children Society process that I've been through was completely worth it, especially in the clinic that I've been working in. There are people who are working since before I was born, when AIDS originated. They give me so much information and background about how the virus was spread and where it started from. Of late, my friends have been telling me I've been lecturing them about, you know, AIDS and this and that. And it all based on my studies. Ever since I've learned this and gathered all this knowledge, I want to just spread it to everyone I can come across.
It's more than just science. It's about creating an atmosphere of peace and tranquility using science.
I was like, man, my summer's gone. It was really like having a job. And I knew I was getting the opportunity to do things that people don't normally get to do. It really just takes you aback when you see people come up to you like, oh, you must be really smart to do this program. And the fact that you learn so much. As far as my studies go, it made me realize that I have a long way to go before reaching the level of Dr. Sat or any scientist for that matter. But it's made me realize that it's not impossible at all. It made me realize that I do have the ability to accomplish all these goals and to achieve.
All of these people go out and present their work on the streets. For example, this is the second year running. We've had the science street fair, and the overall objective of the street fair is to bring science directly to the streets, to the communities.
I worked along the Bronx River this entire summer, observing different plant life and animal life that live there. The waters in the Bronx River, they're very polluted. Basically what I've done is worked on restoring the Bronx River to, I guess, a healthy body of water. We've worked on restoring the oyster populations so that the water can be cleaner. The most exciting part was actually being on the boats, getting a chance to learn how to row a boat and how to do field science instead of lab science. What gives me hope for the future by doing this project is that maybe my children or my grandchildren, they'll get to see some of the things that I've seen. I think this project is basically important for having water for the future.
This year we have also expanded our program nationally to cover students from the Hopi and Navajo reservations in Arizona.
My name is Walker Ami, and what I like about science is discovering new things. I wanted to research alcoholism because I felt like it impacts on the whole reservation. So I just mainly went to the Hopi Substance Abuse Center, and I conducted interviews with recovering alcoholics. Based on this research, what I think could help with the alcoholism problem is like informing the people about the effects. The Harlem Children Society helped me a lot by educating me and giving me the opportunity to explore the world and actually go somewhere like New York here and to actually be able to do the research myself and with actually help of a mentor.
Okay, very good. That was a good thing. Good out. That's really interesting. It goes
Thank
on
you.
and on. I congratulate you very much. It was very interesting. You're not only here in New York City and Harlem and that, but I see you've blended it over into the Hopi and to the Amerindian and to all the people that are in a situation that could benefit. And also, you're talking about science and so forth. That's your area. It makes sense and everything. But this principle could apply more readily to, in the real world, engagement in the activity of the young people in many, many different fields other than just science and cancer research and so forth.
Absolutely.
As you the educational enterprise, it could create people who are autodidact. They're teaching themselves because they're interested and engaged.
Right.
That's really an important kind of value to try and inculcate in our youth, is it?
Yes.
Is it not?
Thanks. Yes, absolutely.
I do.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And you know, even the word Harlem Children Society, when I was first contemplating what to do and how to start, and I was not even thinking of impact. I was just thinking how to address the situation.
Yeah.
And even though Harlem, was a poor and still is a poor neighborhood, but Harlem to me represents the will and drive to succeed despite the hardships that one might have.
Particularly Harlem Renaissance.
Yeah.
What a golden age. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we are all children irrespective of our age, whether we are a 5-year-old or a 90-year-old.
I think the 5-year-olds are way ahead of us. My favorite human beings, I believe, I'm not sure, it doesn't make sense in a certain sense because they're all good and everything, but my favorite human beings are 5-year-olds.
Yes.
They're totally honest.
Yes. Yes.
They have no artifice at all.
Right.
They're so gorgeous. I had a couple 5-year-olds for a while, but anyway, that's aside. Yeah.
Right.
But they're beautiful. Just
Right,
beautiful.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then we are part of a global society, and that's what Harlem Children Society means to me. And therefore, it was never just limited to New York or Manhattan or Harlem, New York City.
The whole world.
But it is across the country. We have various Indian reservations in Detroit, in Washington, D.C., in New Orleans. And then gradually, the last few years have been extremely difficult because of the economic situation, because, I raise funds to give them stipends, and the last few years have been extremely difficult.
For the Harlem Children thing.
Yeah,
yeah, right.
Because because money becomes a very important thing for the students themselves.
Yeah.
Because that was the other criteria that I left is I was going to give them money because so that they don't work in some odd jobs like cutting someone's lawn or in McDonald's. I mean, people can work in McDonald's and cut someone's lawn, but if they are bright young students who are aspiring to do something good.
What do you think? If you look at it, you think you've got some experience now, you've got some tenure in this area, in this vineyard and so forth. How do we identify the people that are just going to milk that system for some advantage and just goof off, and those that are really going to grab hold and take off?
Yeah.
Do you understand? How do you identify,
absolutely.
How do we identify that among the world society, for that matter, and even among the intellectual classes?
Right.
How do we identify the people that are worth it to put this kind of thing before them, this opportunity?
Yeah. That's very difficult to ascertain, but at the same time, I just don't. That's why one of the reasons I don't go with the grades. It's overly emphasized by an interview process, because I would like to know why the child is coming into science.
I had difficulty as a professor, because I was. I guess I'm I may be mentally ill. I hate to confirm that too. No, I'm pathologically anti-authoritarian. I didn't get along very well as an enlisted man in the Army.
Right.
I used to try and explain to the sergeant that we could do things democratically. They didn't want to hear it. They get back in like
Army.
Lou Costello or something. But I became a professor for about 7 years or so at different universities, and 1 year did I do the normal thing. It's a great gig. You can be there, you can have your specialization, you can ego trip all day to a group of students who are just wishing to try and get in touch with you so they can get a good grade and all that and everything. So what I did is, and this is something that I talked over with George Stoney when I did a program with him a few years ago about an educational therapy, educational pattern. And I did something that was just forbidden and couldn't be allowed. Is I used to give, the people would come into my class, and I would say to them on the very first day, I'm going to give every single one of you an A. You've got your A. Okay? Do you understand?
Right.
To get rid of the authority.
Right.
And so you can go away. You can go to Harvard. Good luck. Have a good life. You got your A.
Right.
And then they would go. They would go away. And then as it happened, my class, and I said, I'll be there. I'll be there every day. If you want to come, we'll do something. But I wanted to get rid of the authority. That's like the wages. That's the thing. Do you understand? It's outer directed. And so what would happen, my classroom got filled with the smartest people on campus. They were all rebels.
Right.
And the smart ones tend to be really rebellious about accepting the norms of an authoritarian organized society. They couldn't abide that at the university. There's no place, I don't know, there's a couple of little schools that have tried Antioch or Reed or something, but the authoritarian model is the one that's in place for the educational system to keep authority in the hands and teaching people to be answerable to an authority figure. For a false paradigm, often. But anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't want to. Apparently you and I resonate to the same kind of autodidactic God.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So take them as I was saying. That was then in my hospital, and then gradually I involved other friends and colleagues in other hospitals. So it left the shores of cancer into brain disease and other diseases.
Really,
and as
concrete results.
And as the program started growing, other university campuses and other departments got involved. So engineering and environmental engineering and architecture, robotics, you name it, and we had the students there. So the whole idea was to have these students, give them a chance to explore the fields of science, real science and real world, and see how when they go back into the school systems, they become the ambassadors of that real science in the classrooms, not just for within their own student community, but also the teachers.
Now, how about that model on a larger scale? We got about a couple of minutes left, or a few minutes left. Where does that go? Did you teach them sciences? What was it? C.P. Snow wrote Science, the difference between arts and the sciences and that. And did you have them relate their thinking, your students, or your pedagogy, or whatever you call it, would they be related not only to science, but to the politics of the real world, to the local politics, to the large context in which everything else is ensconced? Were you leading them toward thinking comprehensively about patterns that are characteristic of the overall zeitgeist and the thing? How far can we go toward having pattern recognition be part of the context rather than highly specialized?
Right, exactly.
Because the institutions are trying to get highly specialized.
Right.
And I repeat, they are dividing and conquering the intellectual community.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all at the behest of getting a grant,
right,
tenure review, all that kind of stuff, and grant, and review and success and money.
Right.
How are we going to get over that and have a nation, a world of autodidactic, interesting people thinking comprehensively about maybe getting to a thing like a operating manual for Spaceship Earth that can move humanity in the right direction evolutionarily?
Right. So what I think, and usually it is also practiced by many people, is go both ways at the same time.
So I'm glad you got a voice of reason. Thank you for that little wake-up call to reason. Right,
no,
right,
just because we need to specialize, because we once we focus on one particular thing, and that focus itself drives the innovation, and therefore that becomes an engine of growth. But at the same time, as we focus on one thing, we lose the wider perspective, and therefore we lose why we are focusing on one particular thing.
Well, it's to get a certificate so you can make money.
Yeah, but also even innovation and such, we have to see how that innovation fits in the real world, and not just of human beings, but also the environment and everything else that around it. Because and that conversation itself, the ability to explore what we are exploring in a very narrow sense, and see the wider perspective and how it fits in the bigger mosaic,
there's not enough of that thinking, I think.
But I think that is what has to be done.
Well, really? Well, you're running against the grain of the educational enterprise
that's
in the
exactly,
world.
We've been doing that. All these students who go out in the mentorships, we also organize lectures for all the students. All 400 students get together in lecture hall, and they're required to make a presentation. I invite local politicians from local leaderships to the Nobel laureates to experts in the fields.
You introduce those young students, so scientifically emerging to the wiles of local politicians.
Yeah, exactly. And
you do.
Yeah.
You do that without corrupting the youth. I'm making a joke. I'm trying to make a joke if I can, right?
But, absolutely. But it helps both ends, because the local leader, the politician, sees the hope in the young people that are following, and therefore it sort of is the Ganges River. So if they're ills, perhaps they're sort of soaking and perhaps dipping in that in the next youth, the next generation.
It's going to meld with the Brahmaputra. Coming in from CP snow again. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the younger generation, who is still naive to the outside world, also thinks of the leadership that is coming to them. And therefore having this dialogue, because it's very important to have this dialogue, especially even in the policy making. It's very important for the policymakers to understand the impact of science and education and what science is, and the younger generation has to also understand how the world is run, because someone is running the world.
Well, that's what I asked you about, whether you introduced them to something other than just a specialization, which is too overemphasized in all the disciplines, if you ask me.
Right. And so, I think hopefully it brings about a more responsible citizenry or citizenship.
Thank you.
And I think that is important. That's why we have an education.
And education is really important on a world scale now, don't you think?
I think more than that, it is the awareness, because everyone can go to a university and get educated. Even Hitler was also very educated, and so was Napoleon, and so were other many people.
Hitler couldn't get it into art school. If he had, maybe the world would have been different.
But the awareness is very important as to why we are not the best, and there are other people around us as well.
Yeah.
We can work with other people and the environment and everything else, and therefore hopefully make this world a better place.
Yeah, right.
Or at least have this dialogue.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I think that's really the question. And then I wonder if we could go off. We're here talking on television, right? And I don't know if you're familiar. There's a lot of things going on. There has to be with the. It's like you understand biology, and like there's a thing called gestation of a Homo sapien within the womb of 9 months. Right. It's not 10 months, it's not 6 months, it's not 3 months, it's 9 months. And then there comes a time when there's a change and emergence into a new reality.
Right.
I'm trying to get that sense about we're coming to the end of a 9-month pregnancy for the Homo sapiens species. But in any case, you got this, and there's other movements and things that are trying to get at it comprehensively. And there is a thing called the Zeitgeist movement. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
You are?
Yeah.
That's grounded. Peter Joseph's the one
Right.
who put those films together. Growing like gangbusters all over the world.
Right.
And it's growing. It's 500, 600 million views of the things that they do where they take. It's all based philosophically in a comprehensive way on the work of, I would suggest, there's others of course, but on Buckminster Fuller, a major comprehensive thinker. It's based on it. And they're putting out educational movies. And one of the guys there, a young man, Pistone, put together a thing. He's really brilliant, been to Singularity University and all that in terms of cyber. And he said, what if we could have the store of human knowledge available to us, and in multimedia terms, not in print. Print is very linear, specialization is encouraged and that kind of thing, and that. But in multimedia presentations that can become available to the world, maybe for free, and he's even working on algorithms where they can have the audio track translated autonomically from, let's say, it's English, the track, but it can autonomically be translated to Spanish or Italian or something like that, which is just over the horizon if it isn't already here. Right. So that the educational the educational process can be done for autodidacts that do not have to repair only to the keepers of the canon of the outdated assumptions that inform virtually all of our academic disciplines. They're mired in the past because they got a commitment to the past, but they could be spelling an educational context for the whole of the human society at the highest order of human understanding.
Right.
What do you think about the process of multimedia educational processes for the human society going forward?
I think obviously that will have a major impact, and we use many of those. For example, the students that you saw in the Hopi reservation and other areas, we have live connectivity with them. They participate. So a student in a Hopi reservation, middle of nowhere, or in a rural community in, somewhere else, or even in Kenya or Tanzania and other places, also are presenting their work. Now, the student in a highly urbanized society like New York City, doing very high-tech work in some hospital or university, is talking to a student of the same age, middle of Africa, suffering various diseases. Now, it is a very good way, because then the student understands the concept of their own kind, their own age group, who are in a different time zone, who are in a different...
You mean a time zone like New York, London, like that, and metaphorically.
And that reality of people, even though poverty is the guiding, is the commonality in all that, but it's a different kind of poverty elsewhere, and a different kind of mentality elsewhere. Like the poverty in the Native American reservations is different from the poverty in New York City. The inner city poverty is different from elsewhere. Or the inner city poverty in New York City is different from the inner city in Calcutta, or in Abuja, or somewhere else, or in Paris.
Is the language differences a big barrier to be got over by the peoples of the world? This idea of being able to have a language translation autonomically of a soundtrack from one language to another, where you could even talk into it and it would come out in Swahili?
Yeah, I think
and
that's
back and forth. Wouldn't that
probably,
be great to break
absolutely.
would it be good to break the sound barrier on the languages of the world? Were there 5,000 languages?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's something I think is just over the horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But more so, it is the people from different cultures, and also one of the great, New York has been, especially with this program, a wonderful lab for this program not just to be tested from education and from a scientific point of view, creating the next generation of scientists, but more so in a cultural perspective, because the fact that it is New York City, we have, of course, the African American, Hispanic, and Native American, but we also have this huge immigrant population coming in, who also many times are below poverty line and struggling to get up. And that inner struggle is very important, that even though they might be below poverty line, this exposure of the African American population or the African immigrant coming to the United States, and the multitude of immigrants are very good for our students, because that's one of the things that's
a laboratory for learning.
Yes.
And I saw a thing. I think there's something like 195 countries in the world recognized by the UN.
Right.
And I saw a thing in the AM or something where there's sizable representations of 189 of the 195 nations of the world in New York.
Right.
Everybody is here.
Right.
I think that's wonderful.
Exactly.
I love it that there's so many different things. It's not all white bread.
Right.
It's not all one culture. I think that's really good. So I think it's really entirely good. I mean, I love Manhattan. I don't know about you. I just love Manhattan. I think it's great.
Absolutely.
People walk down the street, they can't speak it.
Right.
But I think it's a great, what do they call, petri dish or something for creating something that would have implications for all over the world in a certain sense. And I think it couldn't be any more appropriate that it be done. One of the leading indicators along that line would be something that would be up in Harlem. And it would seem to me it would be really good if it might be called the Harlem Children Society as an experiment that has larger implications beyond its immediate context for along the lines of what the planet really needs. Could I get agreement with you on that?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You rightfully, you're echoing my my visions and my
Congratulations
thoughts.
enormously on all the work and everything like that. And I thank you for coming in and maybe, in doing this. Are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect?
I'm
got a couple of minutes left.
Always optimistic.
You are?
Yeah. If it was not
optimistic. Are you a cockeyed optimist, a blind optimist? You don't think there's any chance that we could go down the dark path of destruction of the whole species that's now available to us?
Right. Well, one good thing was because I have a training in science, and the training of science is such that we experience a whole lot of failures and a very minuscule of successes.
Isn't it true?
So just 10%, actually less than 10%, 2 or 3% of our experiments ever work.
Okay, but let me ask you another thing. You're a geneticist.
Yes.
Isn't it true that a vast majority, or 99% of the species that have ever existed have gone extinct over the evolutionary period?
Yes.
Is that correct?
I don't know the exact percentage, but it's
no, but it's like 99.
Large.
Really, all of this. That's a very, very wake-up call.
Yes.
For us not going over that, adding to that list of the failures,
right,
and finding the way in which we can get through the eye of the needle to a new way of being in the universe, which would be called liberated, which is also available to us if we can but find it, right?
Yeah. Actually,
there's a larger public awareness.
But I think that's why we have to learn more about socio-economic responsibility. Ecologic responsibility. Because if you are able to care not of the people and the species who we are, but also a wide-ranging
system, we can we might be able to get to universal mind, but we got to do it quick because we're out of time. Thank you, Sat, very much. Your pleasure.